I have not made a video yet to break down the Panthers season and give out awards, but I can prematurely tell you who should get an award on the coaching staff. And it's two guys that have done a fantastic job for the Carolina Panthers offensive line. And that is Joe Gilbert, your offensive line coach, and Kalili Kekua, assistant offensive line coach. And I hope I pronounced that correctly. But those guys have been lights out this year. You go back and look at the travesty, the devastation of what this offensive line was last season. And I understand you brought in reinforcements at the guard positions. You have a new center in the mix. But all things considered, when you look at some of the injuries that occurred through the year, the consistency this offensive line delivered, like you cannot be talked about enough. You go back last year, they give up the Panthers give up 65 sacks. We know, what was it, 62 for Bryce Young? It was ridiculous. I mean, it felt like every time he was dropping back that he was on the ground. This year, and he didn't have time to throw. This year, as a unit, the Panthers only give up 36 total. I mean, you almost dropped that down by 50%, I guess 40%, but almost 30 less sacks than the previous year. And injuries still occurred. Now, I do think you look at the offensive line itself, and when you have an anchor in there in Robert Hunt, and you also have a Damian Lewis, that helps. But we can't sit back and pretend like there wasn't some adversity that came up. When you think about very early in the season, Austin Corbett, your starting center, who one is playing a brand new position, that alone should tell you how well the coaching job was. He has never played center. He gets moved into center. He does get banged up down the road, a few games in, and unfortunately misses time. But his play was off the charts. Ike Ekwonu, who, again, we've talked about, is up for his fifth-year extension for the option to be picked up, which I think the Carolina Panthers should do. He talked about this past offseason how the 2023 season went for him, and he kind of just let things go. Didn't really put in the effort. I like what they got out of him. Is he a perfect left tackle? No, but he's a really good run blocker, and he was vastly improved over last year. Got to give him just kudos. But I think a lot of that has to do with coaching. Ike Ekwonu, again, we talked about Damian Lewis coming over from Seattle. The rotation at the center position. Again, Austin Corbett on IR. Then you have Brady Christensen coming to fill in. He gets banged up at some point. You pick Cade Mays up, who was on a practice squad on someone else's roster. We know he was here for camp. He was drafted by the Carolina Panthers. But he comes in, and then he fills in the gaps, and now he potentially could be the starting center for the Carolina Panthers moving into next year. It is a very wild sequence. Robert Hunt, I hope he gets a captain patch next year. He embodies what it means to be a Carolina Panther. And, I mean, really almost the new Iron Man. Taylor Moton as well had a fantastic season. So all around, even looking at the rotational pieces of Yash Nijman, he was brought in to be the versatile backup left tackle or right tackle. We got to see him. Chandler Zavala, again, drafted in the same class as Bryce Young, slowly coming around, being able to step in when needed, and that was important. I talked about Brady Christensen. It's a really good group. And honestly, you had Andrew Rame, who was the undrafted free agent center out of Oklahoma, that did kind of make the cut and was working his way up, but unfortunately had a concussion and had a setback. But he's still available. You also think about the rushing attack, getting Chuba to 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards, giving Bryce Young time to throw the ball. I can't tell you how many times we look back there. He had over 2.7 seconds. I know coming into this year, it was give Bryce Young the ability to throw the ball in 2.7 seconds. He had that, and he had that on numerous occasions. And so you have to say, hats off to the offensive line coach. Entire group, the philosophy that they put together, the schemes, and Dave Canales, because again, these are the guys that he brought in. But I think the way that all those guys work together, you have to feel really good if you're a Carolina Panthers fan about the state of the offensive line for the Panthers and what it's going to mean going into next year. I mean, we still have to figure out who's going to play center. Still would like to have a few rotational pieces, but overall, you feel like, hey, we've got some momentum built here on the offensive line. We can give Bryce Young, hopefully some more weapons that he can get the ball to, and he's going to have plenty of time to throw. And it's kind of a younger core there on the interior between Hunt and Lewis and Ickey. So the future for the Carolina Panthers, as long as they can stay bright on the offensive front, is good, if not great. And it's all geared and because of the coaching of the staff here in Carolina. So hats off to those guys. I think it's fantastic to see what they did this season and can't wait for next year. This is Carolina Dad. Y'all have a good one.